Leos.
Welcome back to the Strength and Leos podcast, guys. For our guest today, we have a really special guest, an awesome researcher from the University of Michigan, Dr. Longhua. Thanks for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk with the audience.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm really excited to get into learn more about you, learn more about your research, and really just talking more about kind of leopard geckos and then also how that relates to your research. So for people who don't really know who you are, can you give a little bit of background for who you are, what you do kind of at the university, and then a little bit about your research?
So basically, we are very interested in aging and regeneration. So I run a research lab in the University of Michigan. I'm part of a aging research center, the Geriatric Center, and also affiliated with the Department of Molecular and Integrative Physiology. I just started my lab a couple months ago, but we do have a lot of big plans for the research. So Leopard Gecko is one of our model system, and we hope to learn a lot from these animals about how they age and how they regenerate, and hope one day we will be able to come up with some solutions to help people.
Perfect. Yeah. And then also I know you were previously at UCLA. So were you doing similar things there at UCLA before you moved to Michigan?
Yes, at UCLA, I was a postdoc researcher working with Dr. Leonid Klugiak. So Dr. Klugiak is a pioneer in genetics. His earlier work laid the foundation for the whole genetics research in the human populations. With his work, people nowadays can identify the genes and the mutations that is behind a particular disease in the human. So working with Dr. Leonid Klugiak, I was thinking about maybe we can establish a new genetics model to understand biology. He was very excited and supportive about the idea that we started working on the leopard geckos, thanks to the large breeder community for the leopard geckos in the past few decades. There are so many beautiful morphs, with interesting colors and patterns. So that really captivated our attention, and we all think it's a great idea. We carried out the first project there in Leonid's lab by identifying the genetic causes of the white color and the tumor formation in the lemon frost.
Yeah, and there's a lot of information that you guys have brought to light with the lemon frost, and especially when it comes to different tumors and things like that in your lab. So it's really cool, probably for you to be a part of that groundbreaking information.
Yes, it is also a very interesting collaboration as well. So I reached out to a number, after reading about leopard geckos and see these beautiful images about them. So I reached out to several breeders, and one of the breeder who also has probably the largest colony in the U.S., Mr. Steve Sykes. He was very motivated and intrigued in working with us in terms of multiple leopard gecko morphs, of course. But one of the things at that time that a lot of the breeders and also customers care about is the lemon frost. They are very, very beautiful animals, but some customers found like white spots on their skin. And Steve was also frustrated that even though they give these animals really great care, but in the colony, some of these animals just grow these white nodules on their skin. So what is going on? Is there anything we can do about it? And genetics is one of the powerful approaches to do that. So yeah, we all think it was a really great uh, opportunity, and somehow it just happened.
That's awesome. So, did you guys reach out to Steve to get this information, or were you guys reached out to for starting this research up?
So yeah, I made a few phone calls. Like I
Okay.
sent quite a number of emails. But Leonid was very, very supportive. Like we talked about this in his office, and he was immediately like excited, and then started calculating actually the feasibility of such kind of work in the leopard geckos. Because leopard geckos in general, they are still vertebrate, so the way their genome recombines, the rate actually should be similar in the vertebrates. At least shouldn't be too different from humans or mouse, which are already very well characterized by scientists. And he immediately did that, and his conclusion was it is doable. With a couple hundreds of animals, we may be able to achieve something. So then, among the breeders who got back to me, Steve was the one who had the largest colony. So that's also another consideration, right? We need a larger number of animals so that the genetics can work. And Steve was just amazing in that perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, especially when you're talking about research. You want to make sure you get really big numbers of leopard geckos to make sure that your findings really match up of what you're doing as well, because you want to have a bigger sample size to make sure that your research is really going somewhere, which is really cool.
Exactly. So it is the same situation actually for human populations and for mouse as well. If the numbers of individuals are small, then the genetic power is low. But if the numbers are bigger, that means there will be more chromosome recombination events, which will provide more diversity for the genetic tools to pinpoint the cause for example, um, or in other words, in the academic world, we would call that resolution, right? What is the
Okay.
resolution of that experiment? It can be several megabytes of the genome. Then there will be hundreds of genes. It will be very difficult for us to understand what is going on, even though we know part of that chromosome contributes to that disease, but it won't get us further. So with larger numbers, we can get the resolution to individual genes, even to individual mutations. Then that can really help us to understand the biology and potentially come up with treatments. Yes.
Right. Well, that's interesting. So when it comes to this pinpoint and pinpointing this exact part of the genome, how difficult is that when you're going through so many different things and so many different factors, as well as just really the leopard gecko as well?
Yeah, that's a very good question there. Um, so we were able to get our story on the lemon frost out. I think there were a number of contributing factors about the progression of technology as well. So um, we have a review article about genetics in the reptile that are currently being revised. So we will talk about all the history there. But actually, I would say before 2010, uh, genetics research in the reptiles are difficult. People can do a lot of breeding and can identify the way a particular morph segregate in their progeny. Um, but it is very difficult for people to understand what genes drive that morphological phenotype. Um, it is mostly because people don't have a genome. And in the early days, for example, Broad Institute, they spent quite a lot of effort assembling genomes for uh, the lizard. And so there was some assemblies around, but very, very few. And technology back then just not affordable enough for people to do multiple species or to assemble the genome to much, much high quality that can be really informative. Uh, but in the past 10 years, this whole genomics field just like developed really, really in really, really fast speed. So now people can assemble a human genome with less than $1,000. Can you imagine
Wow.
that? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, take advantage of these uh, technologies to sequence the genome, to assemble the genome, and to analyze the genome. I think that was one of the contribution, from the science itself that helped us to get the work on lemon frost completed to certain levels of satisfaction.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably as a researcher who's on the ground of this, you're probably excited because you're like, this is less money we have to put into, doing all these tests and such. And then also when it comes to technology, the technology is kind of at the right place for you guys to do these tests. So it's kind of both coming together in terms of your research as well.
Yes, yes. Actually, now there's a boom of like research, and published papers on all kinds of species with these technologies. So it is really a great time. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So when it comes to like regeneration, like why does regeneration excite you? Why do you get so curious about that? And why is leopard geckos like such a good species for these kind of tests and research as well?
I mean, who is not interested in the power of the Wolverine,
Yeah.
the Logan, right? Or
Right.
Deadpool, right? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like you're a
It's
superhero at that point.
yeah, they are superheroes. But of course, for me, and for most scientists who are working on regeneration, we are not really thinking about to turn us into superheroes. That's just fascination, right? But it's intriguing, to think about the possibility, like one day, our grandparents, they crumble and fell on the ground, broke their leg, but one day there might be technology or medicine to help them, heal the wound very nicely, and even grow the leg back. Of course, I don't dream about that. That'll
Yeah.
be maybe 1,000 years later. But
Right.
yeah, but it is, to think about just improve the medical practice in terms of wound healing and or lost organs and tissues. um, it excites me, and about that potential, the possibility. But of course, we in order to make that happen, my own philosophy, and also the philosophy that I learned from my mentors and colleagues, is that we need to look into the nature, because in nature there are animals which can already do that.
Yeah.
So the fantasy of the Wolverine or Deadpool, it's not all from imagination. It's because there are such kind of knowledge in nature already. People just like turn them into stories, into these superpowers in humans. But actually, planarians, which is another model system that I'm working with, uh, is really a champion of regeneration. Any pieces of this animal can regrow back into a complete new individual. Basically, you cannot kill it with a blade. Uh-huh.
That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And lizards are good at this as well. Of course, salamanders, zebrafish, these are also good models people work on. For leopard gecko, we think it's a really great time to work with these. For example, most of you probably know that they drop their tails in the wild when a predator, in danger, and when they feel the danger from a predator, they can drop their tail, and I did see that happen in the lab. We were not trying to danger the animal. It was just like the animal was nervous, and then the tail just dropped. And if you
Wow.
look at the tail wiggles like a live
Yeah.
animal for like 5 to 10 minutes. That's just crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
And it's
this,
detached from the body completely and it's still
yeah, yeah,
moving.
yeah, and you can understand this easily, right? Because by dropping a tail, the body can run away and save that animal, but the tail will function as a decoy, and then the predator will be happy enough to grab that meat and think that's the animal it wants to eat. And of
Yeah.
course, it does have quite a lot of nutrition in there. So so it's amazing how nature works out. But my point is, evolution shaped this ability, right? Helped
Mhm.
shape the leopard geckos to grow their tails back so that they can survive in the wild. So what we try to do as scientists in the lab is try to look into this mechanism at the molecular and cellular level, how nature has worked this out. Um, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's really cool to think about like that. It's like when you think about leopard geckos, like people who are around leopard geckos, it's kind of normal to them at that point where they see the tail drop off and this happens. But even just like the regeneration of the tail and it comes back too, which is crazy at the segment that it came off of. And it's really cool that they have this ability to do that.
Yes. Yeah. They can grow their tail back, even though it will not be as pretty as before. But the tail does grow back, right? And then if you think about the tail, it has a lot of tissues in it. It has the skin, it has the blood vessels, it has the bone,
Hmm.
and it has nerves. Think about those football players when
Yeah.
they injure their brain or injure their spinal cord. Um, you know, they will have a hard time. But these geckos, they know how to grow those things back and repair themselves. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's not, yeah. And just like you mentioned, it's kind of a lot of intricacies that go into it. It's not just flesh that's getting dropped off. There's a lot of nerve endings and things like that that get repaired through that leopard gecko. So in looking in that, like what models, when we look at leopard geckos and kind of wanting to look at that and apply it to human research, because that's the ultimate goal. We want to see how that applies to human research. So where does your field lie into that? And how do you look at geckos and see how that could apply to humans one day?
Uh-huh. Yeah, one day is a good phrase to have there. Because research always take time. So that's one thing. And then, it will require funding, require resources. And also, as a scientist, I always have this belief that we should really make sure the research is solid before translation. So all of that will take time. But ultimately, I do have this belief that it will be helpful to humans. So how that will work out? So uh, to talk about this, we will need to think about uh, things that are fundamentally the same between a leopard gecko and a human. Uh, to, what levels will a leopard gecko the same as humans? That will be the genes and the cells. So the genes are so our genome are different from the geckos for sure, right? Because every species are defined by their own genome. Um, so there are differences there, but keep in mind that there is also conservation there. Actually, there is conservation between all lives living in this earth on this earth. Um, from little single cellular uh, living organism like the baker's yeast, the one that you use to bake your bread or
Hmm.
to brew your beer. Even genes in their genomes can be conserved with humans. We are not
Really?
talking about every single gene. We are talking about some of the genes. And if you go through the phylogeny of the animals, you will find that the conservation of these genes between different genomes will go higher and higher when we look at vertebrates, which the leopard geckos are. So it is already known that is very well recognized by the scientific community that um, among the vertebrate species, there is a high conservation of the genes in their genome with the human genome. So we do share, or to put it simple, us humans share a lot of the genes exactly the same or with exactly the same function with the leopard geckos. This is equally true with the mouse. That's also why people use the mouse a lot to study diseases in humans. They use them as models. This is the same concept. But of course, a mouse does not drop its tail to grow it back, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, that's very cool, especially in the realm of like regenerative studies. There's so many cool things that people wouldn't realize just from this leopard gecko that's a common pet that people have in their houses. And this really cool animal and this really cool reptile has all these abilities to do so many things, but also because it's a vertebrate, there's so many things that could be translated to humans, which a lot of people wouldn't even realize because one's a reptile and obviously one's a mammal. So a lot of people wouldn't even make that connection from just looking at it from,
Mm.
face value.
Yeah, yeah. So that are the differences or the divergence. There are also some evolutionary biologists working on that. There's a really good field called Evo-Devo, and those scientists will be specifically interested in why different species look different, evolve different. So they will
Wow.
be more interested in the genes that are different in different species.
Yeah.
But if we compare the whole genome, there are a large collection of genes that are conserved. We can talk about the story we published already in the lemon frost, right?
Hmm.
We did not know what the gene will be that is controlling this tumor or the white colored cells in lemon frost. We didn't know that. We are just going blindly, but very well prepared with our technology and intelligence. Try to do the right thing to identify that gene. And when all the data comes in front of us and we see that gene, and it is a gene called spin2 and it turns out this spin2 gene is highly conserved in the fish, in the mouse, and in the humans. And it turns out
Wow.
actually scientists who work on fish and mouse have demonstrated in the past decade quite extensively a lot of good papers from multiple labs all over the world on this particular gene showing that it is a tumor suppressor. Meaning, like, if you get rid of this gene or abolish its function, then cells will grow crazy. And then those cells will turn into tumors. So people
Wow.
have so yeah, it's this conservation that really excited us. Like, wow, that's the gene. That must be the gene, right? And then we looked into the literature about this gene in the humans. Guess what we found? It turns out people already know that this gene is associated with melanoma.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, and think now if we think about melanoma, so melanoma is overproliferation of the melanocytes, which are the black pigmented cells. But in lemon frost, what we see is the white colored cells called iridophores. These are completely different color, and the color is produced because of completely different mechanisms, biochemical mechanisms. So, but they are driven by the same gene. The same gene is working to suppress their abnormal division in the animal body,
Yeah.
and it is the same gene when it makes a mistake and when it loses its function, then both these iridophores, these white color cells in the leopard gecko, and the melanocytes in humans, which are black pigmented, they will go wild to grow into a tumor. Um, but actually, even though when you think about iridophores and melanocytes in evolution, they may appear to you very different, especially if you look at the color. But actually, the contribution from Evo-Devo biologists have demonstrated that no matter what color these color cells are, they all have the same origin in embryonic development. So meaning that the leopard gecko and human, when they are little embryos, there is the same group of cells. They will give rise to white colored cells in the leopard gecko, but they will give rise to black pigmented cells in the human. So there is even conservation in terms of the cellular identity. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's so crazy that even all this past literature as well gets connected to your research, that people were doing this in labs and connecting the dots to, what you guys found in the lemon frost and in this SPINT1 gene. And how cool it is to really connect that to the research that you're doing and seeing that the literature is really connected, and these findings that you guys are finding are really, really adding to the literature that already exists about this gene.
Exactly. That's the beauty of research. Yeah.
Before we go on, I want to say thank you to our sponsors. Impeccable Gecko is a small to mid-sized family-operated hobbyist breeder operation. They specialize in leopard geckos with high-quality genetics. Their goal is to provide customers with the absolute best animals that they could produce, coupled with honest and transparent business methods. At Impeccable Gecko, integrity and animal welfare are above all else. Impeccable Gecko is a strong supporter of the Strength and Leos podcast, so follow them on social media and check out what they have available. John of Geckoboa started early, like most of us, catching lizards and snakes in his backyard at any chance he got. Over the years, he has kept and bred more than 80 species of reptiles. In recent years, his focus has turned to specializing within the genus Eublepharus. He has worked hard to pioneer some of the most cutting-edge leopard geckos while maintaining genetic purity and honesty. He also keeps the most diverse collection of pure Eublepharus species in the world. He has coordinated with biologists around the world and has contributed DNA sampling and distribution range info to help sort out the cladistic relationships within the genus. Check out geckoboa.com for more info and available geckos. Suburban Geckos is operated by Chris Charlton. Chris's passion and enjoyment for herpetoculture, and more specifically leopard geckos, drove the desire to take his hobby to the next level. With experience in breeding and raising reptiles well over 20 years, Chris is dedicated to producing quality animals for both the hobbyist and breeder alike. Suburban Geckos treats each animal with the utmost care and respect, and cuts no corners when it comes to health and integrity of their geckos. What started off as just a couple aquariums has grown into quite the collection in just a few years, and they wouldn't have it any other way. The dedication to their animals is unparalleled and evident in the quality and health of their animals that they produce. Exemplary customer service is another area where they excel. They're readily available to answer any questions you may have regarding their animals, husbandry, and etc. For more info and to see their availability, check out suburbangeckos.com. Blizzy Bold Leos, while new to the scene, is taking strides in following the footsteps of top-tier breeders and keepers in care and ethics while aspiring to bring fresh looks and crosses to explore latent potential. Prior to becoming a breeder, Greg of Blizzy Bold Leos completed hours of extensive research on lines, ethics, morphs, and how certain traits interact with others in order to begin projects which are coming to fruition already in the second season of breeding. With a major focus on line breeding the correct way and customer service done right, Blizzy Bold Leos aspires to be a breath of fresh air to the customers and keepers they encounter. Be sure to check out their Instagram, Blizzy Bold Leos, and stay up to date on project development, availability, or just tips on having healthy animals in your care. Dab Exotics is a hobbyist breeding operation that was started in 2017. They specialize in producing healthy leopard geckos from top quality genetics. Dab Exotics is an awesome supporter of the Strength and Leos podcast, so follow them on social media and check out what they have available for sale. Shane Kelly is a blue-collar, working-class guy that has a reptile breeding business with his wife and kids. They are currently working with high-quality ball python morphs, western hognose snakes, and select leopard geckos with a focus on bold stripes, and they're looking forward to adding Albie Snow and Ghost this year. They have been listening to the podcast since the beginning and are proud to be a Season 4 sponsor. Go check out their social media, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and also check out their morph market to see what they have available. So in talking about the paper, right, we're talking about the paper, genetics of white color and Iridophoroma and lemon frost leopard geckos. So for people who, for common people who want to learn about this research and the paper, how would you explain what the paper is and kind of what you guys did in your findings?
Actually, we already talked about the key information there. So the paper was peer-reviewed and published in PLOS Genetics, which is an open access journal. So that is really great about it, meaning like anyone who can have access to the internet, they can access this paper. So if you want to learn about the details of the study, you can just go read the article in details. We have a lot more details there, of course. The key
Right.
finding is that by working with Mr. Steve Sykes, we did a lot of genome sequencing, a lot, which means a lot of money. Actually, maybe I would say $100,000 more for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, just to sequence their genomes. And of course, we use different technologies, different methods to sequence animals with the lemon frost mutation and animals without the lemon frost mutation, and animals with only one copy of the mutation. So meaning they can be heterozygous or homozygous. So homozygous means if the animal carries two copies of the mutation, and heterozygous means if the animal only carries one copy of the mutation. So from so Steve has this really good record about the breeding history of every single animal. So that really helped us. From the pattern of the record, we know that lemon frost is one single mutation, meaning around the year of 2012, that was when the lemon frost was identified in the breeding colony. Then there is a long history about how lemon frost was identified and then auctioned, and then how Steve got the lemon frost breeding priority through the auction. You can also read. I think you may know more about that
Yeah.
than me. Yeah, yeah. But so from the pattern of the inheritance, we were able to deduce and with high confidence that that is one single gene and one single mutation in that gene. And that just happened from one pair of male and female mating event.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that knowledge in mind, and then with all these sequencing data from different groups of animals, with or without the lemon frost mutation, right? And then with statistics, which is really the expertise of Dr. Leonid Klugiak, and so we were able to sieve through the vast information of their genome, and yeah, the signal is very strong. It was one single gene. Yeah,
Wow.
there's one figure there that really shows this peak around SPINT1 gene, and then
Hmm.
how the signal decays as we scan further and further away from SPINT1. So
Okay.
yeah, the signal really just peaks around SPINT1. But yeah, we were not fortunate enough to identify the mutation, but the signal was strong enough to tell us it is that one single gene.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
So when it comes from like the gene to the mutation, what's like the difference between like both of them? Are they similar?
So we speculate that that is one single mutation. Um, so we were not able to identify the mutation. Of course, as we discussed earlier,
Hmm.
we will need more animals. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot more animals. And also, if if not a lot more animals, then we need the proper controls, and the best controls will be the original lemon frost. You know, it could be Mr. Frosty, or could be Mr. Frosty's parents, or could be Mr. Frosty's parents'
Parents'
parents.
parents.
We
Yeah.
Yeah, but that information was lost in breeding colony because from what I was told, Mr. Frosty and its immediate parents were identified in a cohort of animals housed together, so they were not separate. So it is very difficult to identify Mr. Frost's immediate grandparents or grandparents. I mean, if we can have that information, then we can narrow it down to a particular mutation. But that information is lost. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
a lot of people know what lemon frost, especially if they breed leopard geckos or even if they are interested in them and know about the gene. And a lot of people, it's a beautiful animal, like the white
Yeah.
colors and the yellows and the beautiful
Yes.
colors. But then obviously the tumors come along with it. So do you think people should continue to breed them despite the tumors, or what do you think that opinion
Mm.
goes?
Yeah. I mean, of course, you know, as a a lover of the leopard gecko as a pet, right? You wouldn't want your pet to have tumors. It's just sad to see that.
Hmm.
And as a breeder, of course, they don't want the trouble, going through all those effort to create an animal just to, in the end, find they have some tumors. Of course, it's not encouraged. So basically, I believe Steve has stopped breeding that quite a while ago, and a few other breeders. Um, the interesting thing is that it appears that some of those animals that carry this lemon frost mutation actually does not develop tumor. Um, so that information suggests there might be suppressors in their genome. So if people, out there in the community are interested in continue the breeding, those animals will be favored if you use them as parents to start with. Those animals that do not see obvious tumor after a couple of years in your colony, those might be a good starter point. That suggests that those individuals may already have uh, a mutation or some other mechanism to suppress the tumor development. This is actually not new to lemon frost, especially. This is pretty well known in the genetics field and in cancer biology, in humans and in mouse. Uh, but of course, for us, of course, we are interested in learning about such a suppressor gene and suppressor mutation. So, I mean, if people insist on breeding, I think the healthier parents would be a way to go.
Okay.
I
And even with
definitely
that, are there still points in which the suppression could come out of the gecko and like for their offspring and their progeny, the suppression isn't there and then they produce tumors? Is it kind of a random luck of the draw with those things?
it shouldn't be random, but in terms of the mechanism, it will be hard to predict at this point. After discussion with Steve and a few others, and also the knowledges there from the breeder community, I think such animals actually, it appears they exist. We thought about working with them, especially I think in Steve's colony there were about maybe 50 or 100 animals that looked healthy back then. But it was pandemic time, so that was very
Hmm.
sad. Yeah,
Yeah.
we couldn't visit them, and they were short of staff, and it was just a very very challenging time. So we had that idea, but we had other priorities because of the virus. We had to deal with the virus. So my work back then shifted to study the coronavirus and to help Los Angeles community to establish testing and stuff. So actually, Dr. Klugiak contributed a lot in that. Uh, so yeah, it was challenging time, and it was just unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's awesome you're able to contribute to that impact as well. Yeah. So for the lemon frost, a lot of people think they have ideas not based off research, but that the lemon frost can be outbred from the tumors, and the tumors can be, if you cross it to like wild types or other species of leopard geckos, that it could be disconnected. So what do you think about that?
That is a possibility. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, so from the knowledge from cancer biology, I think we don't know the exact mechanism in terms of SPINT1, of course. So what will suppress this SPINT1 mutation? So it could be a mutation in another gene, which to enhance the tumor suppressor gene of a different gene, which can override SPINT1's impact. So that's a possibility, but it could also be epigenetics. Epigenetics means like it's not necessarily a mutation of a particular gene, but the modification of the genome that may be able to inherit through to the next generation, or may not. So I definitely advise the breeders pay close attention if they do continue the breeding. Yes.
Okay.
To these phenotypes, take very good records, very careful records, and keep those. Uh, if yeah,
Okay.
and so to without breeding, or breeding with a more diverged species. The idea, of course, is to bring in more variations in the genome, which in a way may provide a higher possibility to suppress the SPINT1 impact. I mean, in theory, these are just,
Yeah.
but we don't know,
Yeah.
who will be
Right.
the
Yeah.
lucky one. Yeah,
Yeah.
that we don't. Yeah,
Yeah, it's hard to balance the ethics of, wanting to find out more about the geckos through breeding, but also like you don't want the offspring to have tumors and things like that. So there's a very big balance with both, and I
yeah,
think people should err on the side of caution
yeah,
when trying to go with this kind of thing.
yeah, and also it's also good practice to evaluate the effort, right? I know the breeding takes a lot of effort, so.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree. So when it comes to the genetics of the white color of the iridophores and lemon frost geckos, I know we talked a little bit about that before, but for people to break down the meaning of like what the iridophore is and how that plays such a big role into it, what do you think is the key, the basic key in iridophores and that white color?
Uh-huh. Um, so yeah, that comes to the cellular biology of leopard gecko color and pattern. So in us humans, we have like different colors as well, and that's mostly because of the abundance of the melanocytes, or the way the black pigment is made. Um, so there is a lot of genetic variation in us. Um, but actually, in nature, when we think about butterflies, birds, frogs, fish, and reptiles, of course, you will see like actually they have way more color than us, right? Why don't we as humans have all those colors? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Well, we don't.
Yeah,
But how, like, why do they have like way more colors than us? So in evolution, of course we don't know why, but we know like a bit of the knowledge like behind how different colors are made. So they have different types of cells besides the black pigmented melanocytes. They
mm,
also have white colored, for example, the iridophores. It is widely distributed actually in different animal species, like the fish, the lizards, um, and frogs. Yeah, these are best known examples. Um, so white color, black color, and also the orange and color. It's like a palette of different colors. So
yeah,
that's the xanthophores, and there are also literature about other subtypes of these colored cells. So most of the colored cells use biochemical pathways to synthesize different types of pigments, which will be pigmented molecules, uh, like the melanocytes or xanthophores. These are the best examples of that. Iridophores take a completely different path. So the color from the iridophores, I remember when I gave a lab meeting in Dr. Leonid Klugiak's lab in order to help the computational scientists to understand how the white color is produced. So I used examples of clouds and milk. It is the same principle when you think about the white-colored iridophores. It is the same principle in physics when you think about clouds and milk. Why is milk white and why is cloud white? It is
interesting.
the
Yeah,
Yeah, very interesting thing, right? The physics connect these three completely unrelated stuff. Um, it is the reflection and scattering that generates this white color. Okay, so we know like in milk there is these lipid droplets, right? It's not just water. There's a lot of lipid there, and the clouds we know it's because of these little water particles and other particles there. So they can carry out the function of reflection, scattering, to generate these white colors. So what is in the iridophore to generate these white colors, right? It turns out nature has a very weird way to make these cells. They produce a lot of crystals within these cells, which is crazy, blow my mind.
Yeah.
So actually we looked at this with transmission microscopy, which is the kind of microscopy that can offer you the highest resolution basically in the world, in the whole world. That's the best
Wow.
kind of technology if you look at like tiny stuff. So we use that microscope to look into the inside of a cell. If you imagine now, so how do we imagine this? Let's see. Well, it's way smaller than your hair. So if you imagine a cell which is smaller than your hair, the hair is thin, right? But if you imagine something that's even smaller than your hair, and then if you take that as an example of a big house which has 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, let's say, imagine now the cell is a big house like that. And then we look into this house, we go around, and then we find, oh, in this living room, there are some quite beautiful decorations there, very beautiful paintings. Take this example in your mind. That is how we use the transmission microscopy to transmission electron microscopy to look at the cell, to look at the iridophore, to find those crystals.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like getting to the smallest of the smallest levels.
Yes, and they have a lot of those crystals. We have a few pictures in the paper. That
Yeah.
will give you a visual idea
Yeah. They're really
about
cool looking.
what we are talking about. And the interesting thing is that the lemon frost, or the SPIN2 mutation, somehow led to more crystals. So that probably also explains like there's more white color right in the background. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Mm.
Yeah. No, this is really fascinating to go into like the deep of the technology even behind the cell and looking really. That was a really good analogy too. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We had a Chun-Yi, I think that's her name. It was also during pandemic time, if you think about it. Chun-Yi at UCLA, she was doing the transmission electron microscopy work for us. That was 2021 or 2020, late 20. I don't remember the exact time, but that was like we already kind of know the gene, and we just want to understand the tumor and understand the cell. And Chun-Yi from UCLA, who is running this transmission electron microscopy facility, she just spent quite a few days there, because she need to section through the tissue, and then to look at them, to stain them, process them, and then look at them
Right.
under the scope. So yeah, it is actually a lot of help from these kind of people. It's great people. And
Yeah.
also the veterinarian, at UCLA. Um, uh, yeah, um, yeah, it's yeah, it's a teamwork.
Yeah.
Dr. Sandra from UCLA, she like really helped us take care of the animal, and also her team members. Some of them I may not even know the name. Uh, so and also like Dr. Sandra also helped us. Because for veterinarians working at universities, from what I learned from them is that there is very little literature about the anatomy of a reptile. So meaning like for veterinarians, when they get trained in the class at the school, they actually don't have much knowledge from their textbook about the anatomy of lizards.
Yeah.
They may have knowledge from chickens, pigs, mouse, but this is definitely different. So that's why Dr. Sanjay was also very passionate and driven, and to work with us, so that we can gain some knowledge by working with lemon frost, also for veterinarian trainees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very big team that comes together. It's not just, you guys doing the work, but even getting the
Mm.
geckos from Steve and all the other working pieces that really brought everything together.
Yeah, it took us 3 years. I'm like Steve kept asking me like, when are we gonna find out which gene it is?
Yeah.
In the beginning, I told him maybe half a year or 1 year, but I know deep in mind that's not gonna happen.
Right. Yeah. And it
Uh,
just keeps getting longer.
yeah, I know. Yeah, and the pandemic made it even more slowly. So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, but eventually it worked out. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think 3 years, about
Yeah.
3 years.
But it was worth it, right? To get all this information too out there
Yeah.
too. So it's a really long process, but you got some really great information out of it through the paper.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I hope it will be helpful for people and also different kinds of people. So for that part, I think that is the little bit of satisfaction, for us.
definitely. Yeah.
Work so
So we
hard.
have
This is
two
the
questions
reward.
from our guests actually. So
Uh,
one of our guests, Greg, he asked, how much of a chance do breeders have to have success with lemon frost for those who still produce them?
can you repeat that question again?
Yeah. So how much success do breeders have to produce lemon frost and produce healthy lemon frost in the future?
Oh, yeah, that's a very practical question, right? I would say the chance is low. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks for that.
The
And
chance,
then what was that? Sorry.
you got to look into the colony you already have. Yeah,
Hmm.
to look for signs that you know um, just to go blindly with a sick animal and to attempt to breed out a healthy animal, the chance is low. Yeah, it's the genome is very big. Whether there is such a suppressive mutation from the outbreeding partners or from other species, we don't know. In theory, they may exist, but we don't know.
Mm, right.
So you will have better chance if you go with a healthy looking animal that have been around for a couple of years. So they do not develop tumor in a couple of years. I would say that may give you a better chance. But still, in the next generation, the next generation, you get this stable suppression of tumor. In theory, it is possible, but I would say this chance will be a little bit better than go blindly, but may still be low. But at
Okay.
least you have something to go with. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Nice. And then Shane also asks, in terms of like being able to fix the problem, so there's certain genes that could be stacked on top possibly that can maybe fix the issue with lemon frost, or we already talked about kind of outcrossing, but or even at a genetic level, is there a way that we could suppress the genes that are causing the tumors?
Uh,
It's a lot of possibility talk.
yeah, yeah, it's a good question, but I'm not sure if we should do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, or as a research project, because it's very difficult to justify the project to a funding agency, to to NIH. I hope they will believe in the impact of such a kind of work. But just from what I know or what I was told about grant application, uh, you know, it is just like it is difficult to justify. Um, but yeah, so it will be very difficult to do that in the lab uh,
Okay.
for practical reasons.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of hoops to go through. Yeah, a
Yes,
lot of
yes.
difficulties.
Yeah, and that requires a lot of funding, a lot of.
Right. Yeah. Nice. Well, I know also you're doing research. Obviously, we talked about regeneration, but also comparing young geckos and old geckos. So
Oh
I know you wanted
yes,
to talk a little bit about that, and then also
yeah.
offer kind of our listeners to kind of help out with that research if they wanted to.
Yes, yes, yeah. Actually, your platform is a really, really great opportunity, for us to let this information out. So basically, as I mentioned earlier, that we have this strong interest in understanding aging and regeneration. So if we put it in a simpler form, let's say, you know, our grandparents when they get a cut, let's say on their leg, it may take them several weeks to heal the wound. For example, that happens in my dad actually. So that's also one of the motivation. I It was very sad for me, for me and for my kid, actually, especially for my kid. Like they got a scratch, I got really worried, a little boo boo and give them a bandage.
Hmm.
But actually, their wound heals like in 2 days, and then there's not even a scar left. Like, and I was worried, oh, because I have a girl, so I don't want her to look ugly in the future with a
Yeah.
big scar on her face, yeah, or something like that. I just like concerns me. But
Right. Yeah.
actually, when they were little, that those little scratches they don't leave a scar. But if
Hmm.
we think about our grandparents, and in my case, my own dad, it took him weeks, around a month to really just heal a scratch from in his leg because he walked
Wow.
and he tripped, and it's just very sad to see that. So, as a regeneration biologist, of course, I want to make a difference there, right? And then, we are working with this perfect animal, right? This lemon frost. So I hope to, I don't know the answer, and no one knows the answer actually, because there are very few scientists working on lemon frost or reptiles in general in this whole world. So the scientific community doesn't have this knowledge. So we hope to look into, for example, tail regeneration in a young leopard gecko and an old leopard gecko. So it's very easy for us to get young leopard geckos. We can just talk to the breeders, and it's very easy to do that. But to get these older leopard geckos, it definitely require your help. Um, because breeders usually just keep them for 1 to 3 years, I think I hear, and then they will just use younger adults to establish a new breeding season. Um, yeah, so it's most likely the for those those of you who are listening may have a relatively older geckos. What is the old age? I'm thinking about, let's say, 3 years old, 5 years old, or 10 years old, or 15 years old, or even 20 years old. From the reading that I did, or from what I was told, is that these lemon frost, um, no, not lemon frost, sorry, the leopard geckos, they can live up to 28 years. So we really want to look at the old age. I mean, I don't imagine like we will be lucky enough to hear from someone who have a gecko that is 25 years old. I mean, if you do, of course, we would love to talk with you. Um, but if you do have a gecko that is more than 5 years old, and you are okay, and you understand the science, and you are okay to donate that animal to us, yeah, definitely reach out to us. We have a website. We have a lab website. You can just reach me through my email. And but of course, we know, we understand, to donate such pet which you have been living with for a couple years will be sad, and they will emotional. So in return, um, I'm hoping to establish such a mechanism so that you can pick uh, any morph from any breeder, and then we will reimburse you for a new pet, yeah, a new leopard gecko. Yeah, you can pick it, you know, Steve Sykes, I know they have a large colony, but I think you can also pick just from whichever breeder. You know, yeah, we can talk about that and work it out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll have all that information too included within the podcast so people could reach out to you and if they want to get more information on that and send you your email and if they want to, help out and donate to the awesome cause of just getting that research out there.
Yeah, but definitely don't lie about their age, okay?
Yeah. You can tell. You probably know the leopard geckos now where that's a couple
Yeah.
weeks old and they say it's like 10 years old.
Yeah. So I know Steve has a good record. So if you have worked with Steve before, we can actually trace back to the breeding history, and then oh, that was the gecko sold to you, and then
Yeah.
well, then we will have 100% of the confidence of their age. That'll be great as well. Actually, I mean, if you have worked with a breeder before, which you can have such kind of uh, you know uh, clear understanding about their age, that'll also be very helpful because we don't want to mess up the study, right? The design of the experiment. We don't want to generate false knowledge for the
Hmm.
scientific community, and that is not good for anyone. But
Right.
we do see great benefit here. If we look into this question, there's no one in the world working on this problem, but leopard geckos are really great to give us answer to this question. Imagine, the potential reward, right? If we look into their regeneration and we find the differences, in their regeneration, we identify the genes and we identify the cells that are changed by age, and we figure out how to, make it heal better. Uh, yeah, that's my dream at this point. But I
Yeah.
know it always take a long time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's always in the future. We're doing the work now so we could get to the future of all this
yeah, and
stuff.
yeah, maybe my trainees or some other scientists will be pick it up after I disappear from the world. But
Yeah.
it all that's the beauty about scientific research. Once the knowledge is generated, it will stay there, and someone can always continue to push it forward. It always go forward. Yeah. So,
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, and it's really cool to get that information to people out there and allow leopard geckos to really be the foundation for so many researchers across the world to get into the literature as well.
exactly. Yeah, I really hope you know we can go further, and especially with the help from the community.
Definitely. Well, I really appreciate you just spending your time here on the podcast today and giving your information and really allowing your research to really be shown out to the world and really get it to more people so more people could kind of understand more about regeneration and the cellular and microbiology that goes behind the leopard geckos.
Yeah, and even if it just inspires some kids to look into the science, I will be happy enough already. Yeah. Mhm.
Definitely. Well, to end off the podcast, we do some quick rapid fire questions. So, is that okay if we quickly go through those rapid fire questions?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, nice. So, are you like to drink coffee or tea?
Coffee, but
Okay.
sometimes tea. Yeah, but in the morning
Okay.
I need
Okay, yeah. And are you a morning or a night person?
shift into night person.
Okay. Yeah. Do you like to read books or watch a lot of TV?
Very little TV, but a lot of reading. But on computer. Yeah, so I try not to. Books are expensive.
Yeah.
Scientists have good salary, so yeah. But I read a lot on the screen. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I know you're in Michigan and in the Midwest, and then you were in California before. So do you like the warm weather or the cold weather better?
I would say both. I grew up in a town which has distinct four seasons, just like Ann Arbor. So I'm okay with it. And actually, I
Okay.
look forward to skiing in winter. But of course, California is great. Los Angeles is
Yeah.
great. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But it turns out like there is also beach here, which is also beautiful.
Yeah. It's not the same because it's not the ocean, but
Yeah,
yeah.
but the lakes are humongous, and the
Yeah,
kids
they
thought,
are.
oh,
They're really
why
big.
the ocean? And then I
Yeah,
told them, oh, that's the lake, a
right.
humongous lake.
Exactly. And it's not
Yeah.
salty either, so that's good.
Yeah, they can swim there, and there's no huge waves, so it's very peaceful. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And then do you like to eat your dinner or do you like dessert, wait for dessert more?
Um, I have I do not have much dessert. Yeah, so
Okay.
dinner is always a very comforting meal for me for the whole day.
Okay. Nice. And then for science, do you like biology or physics more? I think I know the answer.
Biology more, yeah.
Okay.
Physics is amazing, but it's so hard.
Yeah. Definitely. And then for leopard geckos, out of all the colors of leopard geckos and all the amazing morphs, which one do you think is your favorite?
Um, there are so many of them. It's hard to say favorite, but I can name a few. Black Knight looks amazing to me, and
Yeah.
but the Blizzard also looks amazing to me. And patternless is also very intriguing, right? They don't have any pattern. Yeah,
Yeah.
and Sunburst, they are gorgeous,
Hmm.
and yellow and white, it's just yeah,
There's so many to
yeah,
choose from. Yeah.
yeah, yep. Mm.
Perfect. Well, again, I appreciate your time coming on the podcast, and I hope to see more research in the future. And whenever you get more papers out, and we could continue to just discuss, and then allow people to be inspired by your research and get more information out there to the world.
Yeah, thank you very much, Evan, for giving me this opportunity, both to talk about the science and also to communicate with the community. Yeah, I look forward to more communications with you and the community in the future. So, so I have a website, but I think if you just Google my name, you will, and then plus lab, you will be able to find our lab website, and from there you will be able to find our contact information. So I do look forward to hearing back from you, especially on the old geckos. Thank you
Definitely,
very much.
yeah. And for everybody listening, all that information will also be in the description on YouTube, and then also in the podcast notes. So make sure to look out for that. So thanks for having you on, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you very much.
And that's going to wrap us up for this episode of the podcast. I really want to thank Dr. Longhua for coming on to the podcast, really sharing his research and what he did and what he published through all of his awesome and hard work, really connecting that scientific and research community to the leopard gecko community, the hobbyists, the breeders, really the people who really listen to this podcast and really have this research impacted by. So I really want to thank him for coming again onto the podcast. As you guys know, at the end of each and every episode, I do my one big thing. And for this episode, unfortunately, I don't have a one big thing. There's just so much great stuff that was talked about in this episode. So many amazing, awesome aspects of the research, the impacts of this research, and really the nitty gritty of how this impacts us as breeders, as keepers, and as enthusiasts. So I really just want to encourage you guys to go back, listen to the episode, really just dig deep into the contents of it, what we talked about, understand the research, be able to talk about the research to people who may not understand lemon frost and ramifications of it, and really just be into the scientific paper and really dissecting it if you can. Go ahead, print it out, annotate it, whatever you guys have to do to really just understand what this research was about and really the importance of this conversation and how it impacts our hobby. That's going to be my one big thing. I really encourage you guys to go back, listen to this episode, go talk about it with other breeders, other people in the reptile hobby. Go into your Facebook groups, your DMs, your messenger, and go and start civilized conversations about this and really make sure to get this information out there. I think that's why I love doing the podcast, and I hope you guys really just want to do the same thing and get this information out there to people so they understand really the ethics of breeding lemon frost, because they are a beautiful morph, right? At the end of the day, they brought in a lot of economic value and money into the hobby. But as people, I know for myself that I put the care and really the health of the leopard geckos at the forefront of my business and as my keeping, just as a regular keeper, regardless of the entity of decked out geckos. And I hope you guys can do the same and really just understand the ethics of why we do some of the things we do and why we don't breed certain genes into the hobby, is because the health of the leopard geckos should always come first. And I know that's at the forefront of my brain, and I hope it is at yours too. So I really encourage you guys to have those conversations in the hobby and really continue to strengthen and unite the hobby through some of these things that we decide through the research and the things that come from the scientific community and how it impacts our hobby. Again, I want to thank you guys for listening to this episode. Make sure to share with a friend, rate our podcast, and subscribe. Make sure to check out our podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, all those platforms, and YouTube if you guys are watching this online. Don't forget to check in next time for our next episode on all those platforms. This is your host, Evan Woldridge. I want you to continue to grow in knowledge and share the strength in Leos.